here with NHL legend Theo Fleury. Theo, thanks so much for coming on Perform.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I've obviously been a big fan of yours. I've followed your story. You know, you've played in various, obviously, NHL teams. Is there one team or one time when you think back that really stands out for you? Like, you know, I know you played with the Flames, the Blackhawks, and tell us about why that would stand out for you in your NHL career.
Well, first of all, I was told that I was never going to play, right? Because I was too small, right? Mm. And, you know, I got drafted in 1987 after 20 rounds of the draft. Mm. Okay, so basically the first year I was eligible, I didn't get drafted. And then the second year, I got picked in the 8th round by the Calgary Flames. And all I ever wanted was an opportunity and a chance. And the Flames gave me that chance in 1987. And I came to my first training camp in Calgary and turned a whole bunch of non-believers into believers. And so you're asking me about which team. It would be the Calgary Flames, because they're the team that gave me the opportunity and gave me the chance. And then not only that, you know, when I finally did make it to the show, you know, I won a Stanley Cup here in Calgary. And so I live in Calgary now. You know, I'm a true Calgarian and I'm a true Albertan. And, you know, everything I have, I owe to the Flames organization and the people of Calgary and the people of Alberta. Mm.
What was it like growing up in Saskatchewan? You know, obviously it's pretty hockey town, but give us a little bit of insight about that.
Well, I believe, you know, it's the heart and soul of hockey in Canada, you know. Grew up on outdoor rinks, grew up, you know, in very cold, extreme environment. You know, I think that's where a lot of my toughness, you know, sort of blossomed and created itself. And you know, I grew up in a home where, you know, both my parents struggled with addiction. Mm. And you know, it wasn't a whole lot of fun to be around my house. And so hockey and baseball, you know, sort of became my happy place, because when I was there, I didn't have to be at home. And not only that, I was really good. I was a good athlete. And so I spent every waking hour, you know, either at the rink or on a baseball field, you know, trying to get better every day. And I don't think it was at that point, I don't think it was cognizant. I think, you know, originally it was just an escape from, you know, my home life. And there was lots of really great people in the community that I grew up with that raised me and taught me some really amazing core values that, you know, that I still hold near and dear to my heart today. And, you know, and then as I got older and got more exposure, you know, there was scouts that were coming to watch me play. And then ultimately, you know, I got drafted by the Winnipeg Warriors of the Western Hockey League. And when I was 15, I moved to Winnipeg for better competition and better coaching. And then the year after that, the team that I was originally drafted by got sold to the town in Saskatchewan called Moose Jaw. And so I moved with the team and I spent 4 years, you know, playing in Moose Jaw.
Mm. Tell us a little bit about, like, obviously, you know, we know about the addiction that you've had with alcohol, with drugs. Like, how did it start? How did you kind of like get through it? Like, you know, I have a couple friends that are going through some alcohol addiction right now. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I've come to the point where it's like, I want to help them, but they got to help themselves. So it's like, you know, would you say for people out there that are also probably in situations where they've got loved ones, should they take a step back? Like, was it where everybody left you and then you decided to kind of like move forward, or was there, give us some insight.
Yeah. Well, I hate the word addiction.
Yeah.
I hate it because it has so much shame attached to it. And, most people don't understand addiction, right? Because it's very socially acceptable to go to a bar and drink your face off and get hammered, right? So most people say, well, why don't you just stop? Well, I wish it was that easy. And so the reason why people use alcohol or drugs or whatever, gambling, sex, whatever it is they experience trauma in their life. Okay. And I shared with you the first traumatic experience of my life was living with my parents who both suffered with addiction. And really what addiction is, it is a coping mechanism to suppress emotional pain and suffering. Ultimately, that's what it is. And, I had a coach who over a two and a half year period raped me 150 times as well. Okay.
Wow.
And shortly after that, I discovered alcohol as a way of, sort of dealing with what was happening. And, I was addicted from probably the first drop because, the way that I was feeling, the alcohol would suppress, the emotional pain that I was experiencing. And so, I went along in life, drinking a lot. And then I started to discover the hard drugs, marijuana, cocaine, there was a lot of sex addiction involved. There was a lot of gambling issues as well. And so, I got to the point where, the alcohol and the drugs weren't working anymore. None of those coping mechanisms were working anymore. And, 16 years ago, I had a fully loaded pistol in my mouth, ready to pull the trigger.
Wow.
Not because I wanted to die, but I was completely exhausted from living in this emotional pain and suffering. And, I basically tried everything on the planet to get rid of this. And after that unsuccessful suicide attempt, I started down a path of healing and self-discovery and getting honest. And, I wrote a book in 2009 called Playing with Fire that really changed my life and put me on a different path.
Mm-hmm. What was it that made you change though? Like, was there a moment, did you hit rock bottom?
Yeah, I didn't want to die, right? I had the gun in my mouth and I couldn't pull the trigger. So obviously I don't want to die. So I better figure out how to live life on life's terms. And so, that was the start of it, right?
Could anybody, like, let's say that you were in your addiction, deep in your addiction, and let's just say that somebody wanted to get through to you. Could they have got through to you? Like, what advice can you give people, like families or,
Well, you can't help somebody that doesn't want help, right? That's the bottom line. And that's the most difficult thing with addiction is, the last person to see their lives going down the drain is us, right? And what alcoholics and addicts are really good at is we are really good at collecting enablers. We collect them because the more enablers we have, the longer our behavior can last. But what happens is we eventually make the enablers sick from our behavior. And so the enablers then go look after themselves and then we're left alone to our own defenses, right? And 9 times out of 10, when that happens, most of us hit that proverbial rock bottom because there are no more enablers in our life. And then we're, like I said, we're left with our own defenses. And so we either continue down that path and die, or we smarten up and start to figure this out.
Did you go to a treatment center?
I've done every kind of therapy known to mankind.
What about the people that are out there that are deep in addiction but can't afford to leave their job for whatever reason and pay to go to a treatment center? Like, I was faced with a situation recently where a friend of mine was deep in addiction, and he's like, I can't afford $10,000.
Right.
And then it kind of puts me in the position, of, do I help this person get the $10,000? Like I didn't really know how to handle that. Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, 1 out of every 30 people that go to a treatment facility go on to have continuous sobriety. 1 out of 30.
Wow.
Okay. So what I suggest is there are many different 12-step programs: Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous. There's Sex Addiction Anonymous, and they are wonderful programs. And it costs you $2 a day to go to a meeting. That's it. And that's where I started. I started in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then, from there, I needed a little bit more work. So I started, doing a lot of counseling, doing some group therapy. I went to different treatment centers. But that's where you have to get to. You have to get to the point where you're willing to do whatever it takes to stay sober 1 day at a time. That's it. That's what it's all about. And because we live in a society that loves to attach stigma and labels to everything, it is a detriment to people who are trying to get sober, right? And, the best advice you can give somebody is you have to know what your boundaries are, what you will accept from that person. You let them know that these are my boundaries. And if you cross them, I will have to leave so that I can take care of myself. Right. And, I grew up in a home where there was no boundaries, none. Didn't learn boundaries, didn't even know what the word meant. And so, a lot of the enablers don't have boundaries. Right. And, and we are the fixers, right? We try to fix everything, right? But somebody who's in the throes of addiction, they don't want to be fixed. They don't want to be fixed. The only thing they focus on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is how do I get loaded? That's their only focus. Right?
Correct.
And so, you sit them down, you say, I love you. I care about you, but I can't watch this anymore because it's making me sick. Right? And you say to them, when you're ready for help, I will be here for you every step of the way. But until you make that choice and you make that decision, there's nothing I can do that's going to change what's happening.
From the moment that you started deciding that you wanted to get sober, till you actually got sober, how long did that take? Was it a year? Was it,
It took me 10 years to get 1 day.
Wow.
Yep.
And how long did it take you? So from that one day, did you keep going and stay sober?
Yep. I have it on my phone. I'll let you know here. Hang on. I have 5,491 consecutive days of sobriety.
Wow.
My sobriety date is September 18th, 2005. I've been sober a little over 15 years now.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. I want to, for my own, I was watching the World Juniors brawl.
Yeah.
I want to hear about like how this went down, because I know you were in the middle of it all. Give us some insight on what that was like, how it all started and, what that meant to you.
Oh, geez. Well, I wasn't supposed to be on that team. That's the first thing. I went to the camp at Christmas time and basically, lit it up during the camp and made the team, and basically had a fourth line sort of role on that team. And we had a great tournament, and so the final game, we had to beat the Russians by 4 goals because it was a round robin tournament. There was no quarterfinal, semifinal, final at that time. It was just a straight round robin tournament. Team with the best record, won the gold medal. So we had to win by 4 goals. The Russians had a horrible tournament. They were very embarrassed. And whether they beat us or not, they could finish no higher than 6th in the tournament. And so we were well on our way to achieving our goal of winning by 4 goals. And the game was really kind of chippy and, dirty. And so about halfway through the second period, a whistle. One of my teammates got into a scuffle with one of the Russian guys. They started throwing punches. Then we all sort of kind of went over to that spot. I got cross-checked from behind. My teammate stepped in. Next thing you know, there's a 5-on-5 line brawl happening. And then I looked up and I saw both benches coming, gloves flying everywhere. Everybody's throwing punches and, here we go. But the ironic thing about that whole thing was it was happening every night in the league that we were all playing in, junior hockey. There was either a line brawl or a bench clearing brawl every night where we had come from. And so basically, we brawled these guys for about 45 minutes, and then we cleaned up the ice. We were sitting in the dressing room, and the president of Hockey Canada at that time came into the dressing room and basically said we'd been disqualified and kicked out of the tournament. And, the rest is sort of history.
Wow. Yeah, no, I was watching that, and that was an insane brawl. That was all time. Like, I was pretty impressed.
It was infamous. That's for sure.
For sure. Tell me a little bit about, how you overcame Crohn's disease, and what that means to you. I know that you got a few things going on with that right now. Give us some insight on that.
Let's see. I was diagnosed in 96 with Crohn's. Didn't really know the extent of it at that time. They obviously went the big pharma route right at the beginning. I was put on a steroid. I know why Olympic athletes take steroids, because when I was on prednisone, it was unbelievable. I could have played a whole entire hockey game and not got tired once, on these things. But what happened was my feet and my hands started to swell up, and, it caused me a lot of pain and discomfort. So I got rid of the prednisone, and then I started to look at a holistic approach to Crohn's. And at that time, the holistic remedies were hadn't been studied a lot. There was some information, not a lot of information. I changed my diet a little bit, and that gave me some relief. But any kind of stomach ailment, it all goes back to stress, right? And the less amount of stress that you live in, the easier it is for, the stomach to perform, the way that it should perform. And, being in the, in this field of mental health and mental wellness, I've discovered that we always thought, the epicenter for everything was our brain. Well, it's not. The brain is actually the gut, and what we put in to our stomach has a huge impact on our overall well-being, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I still have it. I still have episodes of it, but, I have a toolbox full of tools now where, I'm just reading a book now called, what's it called? Enzyme something or other. It's about enzymes and the importance of using external enzymes to alleviate inflammation in the body. And so, it's been a process. I am way better than I've ever been at any point in my life. I'm drinking Kangen water now as well, which is amazing stuff. Very healing properties in it. I take a probiotic every day, and lots of enzymes and stuff. So I've been able to decrease the inflammation in my body, which I believe that all of us have issues with inflammation in our body because of the way our food is processed, and when we go to get it in the store, they package it up really well, and they put all kinds of fun things on it that attracts us to eat it. Food causes a lot of the inflammation that we have in our bodies that cause us a lot of physical and mental issues as well.
Is there anything you wanted to go over today, Theo, before we wrap up, or any questions you have?
Well, I work in the field of trauma, mental health, and addiction. Mm. And I believe it's the biggest epidemic that we have on the planet. Mm. And we as a society have not created a safe space for people to talk about their trauma, because I believe everything starts with trauma. Mm. And then, because we experience trauma as little people, and that trauma leaves us in emotional pain and suffering. Okay. Mm. And so how do we deal with this emotional pain and suffering that's left behind from these traumatic experiences? Well, we tend to gravitate towards the dark side of life, and we get involved in addictions as a way of coping with the emotional pain that's left behind from those experiences. And because society doesn't have a whole lot of compassion or empathy for emotional pain, we tend to keep all of this inside. Mm. And by doing that, it causes us a lot of physical and emotional suffering for many, many years. Until we get to the point where, like I said, we got to make a choice. We got to make a decision. Am I going to die, or am I going to live? And the only way we're going to live is by using our voice to talk about what happened to us, right? And, in 2009, I wrote this book called Playing with Fire.
Mm.
And I had no idea why I was writing this book other than for selfish reasons. I wanted to put all this stuff on paper, take one last look at it and put it in its rightful place, which was the past. Well, the universe has a sense of humor because what happened was when I was out on the book tour, I got run over by people who were coming up to book signing and saying, "Hey, man, I read your book. You told my story. Me too." Right? And so consciously, I didn't realize that the vulnerability in which I told my story created a safe space for people to approach me and tell me their own trauma story or their trauma history. And so when we're vulnerable, it creates safety. And then when you have safety, that's when the magic of healing happens, is when people feel safe. And, we're living right now with the most traumatic event that's ever happened since World War II, which is COVID. Okay. And so we've had more people die of opioid overdoses and suicides than we've actually had of COVID. Okay. And so, when we live in fear, which is what they want, that's what they want. It puts a tremendous amount of stress on the body and the mental and your mental wellness. And because the stigma is, I can't talk about this stuff. That's why we're seeing all of these astronomical stats around opioid deaths and suicides, is because we have not created a safe space in society for all of us who experience trauma and mental health issues and addiction issues. There's no place for us to go. There's no place for us to talk, right? And there's all these campaigns and all these, fluffy things out there. But like I said, we haven't created that safe space, and until we do that, we are going to see these addiction deaths and suicides continually rise because there's no place in society to put this epidemic.
For people that are, really vibing with that and going through a lot of stuff, what advice can you give them? What could they do right now for people that are watching this, that are going through a lot of stuff? Can you give some insight on how to help them?
What I always say is, if you struggle with mental health and addiction issues, you're in the majority. You're not in the minority, right? For many years, I thought that I was the only person in the world that was experiencing what I was experiencing. And like I said, I got vulnerable. I told my story to the world. And what happened is I ran into a whole bunch of other people who were struggling just like I was. And, so I've been, for the last 15 years, I've been going around collecting people, I call it. Collecting people who've had the same experiences as I have, and created this dialogue and created this safe space, and have used the vulnerability of my story to create, these safe spaces and these safe conversations. And so, we weren't put on this earth to suffer in silence. We are put on this earth to be in relationship with one another and help each other get through the most difficult times in our life. And, the one relationship that I neglected the most was the relationship I had with myself. Okay.
Mm.
And I used all external outlets to suppress the relationship I had with myself.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
And the night before I got sober, I hit my knees in a washroom and I surrendered. And I said, I cannot do this on my own anymore. I need help.
Mm.
And from that came this amazing life that I get to live today.
Mm.
Right. And ultimately, that's what has to happen. Right. Because you can't do this on your own. You cannot overcome any one of these three things on your own. Because I tried it and I failed miserably every time because I had this, tough guy, macho attitude. Right. And so when I surrendered, I got rid of all that stuff because I knew I was going to die. Simple as that, and it wasn't going to be a quick one because I knew I couldn't kill myself. I tried it. Right. So it was going to be a slow, painful, lonely, bitter, angry death. Right. And I knew I was better than that. I knew I was better than what I was showing the world. And so I had to get honest. Right. This is what happened. This is what I did. And this is where I ended up. Right. And until we can get people to that point, they're going to struggle, just like your friends. Right. And, instead of pointing the finger and judging them, why don't you just ask them, what happened to you? What happened to you? Right. And then say, I don't care what you tell me. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to judge you. I just want to help, but I can't help unless you tell me what happened. Right?
Very powerful. Honestly, that's exactly what I should be saying. 100%. I think this is great information. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from this. Honestly.
Yeah, because if you don't know what the problem is, right? Everybody thinks that the problem is alcohol. If you remove the alcohol, everything's going to be fine. No, you still have the ism. Alcoholism. You still have the ism. And the ism is the trauma, is the mental health issues. And so you need to, get rid of that stigma, get to the core of what the issue really is. And it's usually trauma, right? What I find in my experience is usually trauma, right? I don't know if you've ever watched that show Intervention.
Yeah.
Well, when you're watching it next time, look for the trauma piece because it's always there, And once that person opens up to what their trauma is, then everything else is explained. That's why we gravitate towards those kind of behaviors because it helps suppress that emotional pain and suffering that we're feeling. Right?
Definitely.
And so, what happened is better than, why don't you just stop drinking? Well, that's not what it is. That's not the problem. The problem is what is at the core of the reason why you need to use alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, food to suppress how you're feeling. Right?
Definitely.
Because it's sadness, it's anger, it's shame, it's guilt, and guilt and shame are what kill people. That's what kills people is the guilt and the shame.
Mm.
And you need somebody to come in and put your mind in their mind.
Mm.
That's compassion. That's empathy.
Mm.
That's love. That's attachment. That's caring, right? That's what they need.
Mm.
That's what they need. They don't need judgment. They don't need pointing fingers. They don't need frustration. They need somebody who is compassionate and understands exactly what they're going through.
Mm. Mm. Listen, Theo, thank you so much for coming on Perform, man. You are an amazing guest, added a tremendous amount of value. Honestly, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.